we get a caller, you'll want those. Good morning and welcome to Viewpoint, your program of personalities, politicians, and perspectives. This morning we have a politician? No. We have a personality? Yes. We have perspectives? Yes. Our guest this morning is going to be introduced right immediately by Mr. Loyd Kirby, our co-host. Go right ahead, Mr. Kirby.
All right, so from the Christian Village, we have Lifestyle Coordinator Jamie Morrow with us in the studio today. So, Jamie, thank you for joining us.
Well, we brought Jamie aboard because, as you know, most of our friends know, that Gene and I are now residents of the village, very satisfied residents. They go above and beyond the pale to try to help and make sure their guests are happy out there. And they have a bunch of happy campers out there. One of the reasons the campers are happy is Jamie Morrow, our activities director. So, Mr. Morrow, can you just describe in a short time the depth of your what you do for us old people out there, besides comb our hair?
Well, the first thing I do, as always, is tread carefully. And I'm the lifestyle coordinator. I help plan the activities and basically act as a sort of master of ceremonies, as well as doing little odds jobs around the place, and just basically be anything anyone needs me to be, with a particular focus on activities for the residents, games, and I have a particular focus on audio-visual events.
You know, I said casual things. One of the things I note, they have a very nice lunch they serve out there at noon at the Congregate Building. And Mr. Morrow does not only takes care of us and the things that we find interesting to do, he stands there and waits tables for us. Yeah. And does a nice job. I'm going to have to tip him someday. Go right ahead. Go ahead.
So how long have you been at the Christian Village, son?
I only started in July.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And what was your background prior to that?
Well, before that, I was the manager of a kitchen in Petersburg that did a Meals on Wheels type program. Before that, I was a home health care aide with Addis. Before that, a bookseller at Barnes & Noble in Springfield. And before that, I was a college professor at Benedictine College, an adjunct professor.
Okay. What subject area?
English. I taught research writing.
Oh, okay.
How to conduct research and how to investigate matters and how to write.
It's kind of a finite field, research writing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I may have to call on him. I do a weekly or a monthly column for the Village Voice out there, and I have to turn it into Jamie. I'm going to have to start having him critique him before he publishes it.
That's actually my main schooling, and is analysis of large stacks of books, data, and whatnot, and whether or not information is credible or not, and tracing information and all that, and the senior stuff you just sort of fell into.
Maybe I might not ask this question, Loyd. How am I doing? We'll disregard that question and move on to another subject.
All right.
How long have you been with us, Jamie, at the Christian Village?
Since July.
Since July.
Yeah.
Well, the neighbors are pretty happy bunch of campers.
I hope so.
Tell us some of the things that you do, some of the activities you organize and put out for us.
Well, I inherited quite a few from my predecessors. Like, there's a bingo game on Friday, which you'd imagine at a senior home. There's, of course, men's and women's coffee, and as well as they've recently started watching Downton Abbey again. They had to take 2 years off with COVID and everything, and they picked right up where they left off. So there's a few activities throughout the week. One activity I added at the beginning of my tenure was I noticed there weren't any activities for the visually impaired, and that dovetailed quite nicely with an idea that Mr. Gossett had at one point earlier in the year, to bring back big band music and whatnot. And I informally call them AV Mondays, but I host them at 1:30 every Monday at the Christian Village, and I'm always looking for more people to come. We have rotating every other Monday. It's either big band music or doo-wop or what have you, or it's old radio dramas, which had again doing my research. I was able to find high quality versions of old Orson Welles and The Shadow and things like that. And I recently had Garrison Keillor's Prairie Home Companion. I had a large backlog of his stuff downloaded from right before he got in trouble, or right as he got in trouble, knowing it'd be removed, and I was able to get all that stuff where they took it down. And he's getting axed. Residents really liked News from Lake Wobegon, but the rest of it is, not to their taste. So I think I'm going to swap him out for the Red Green Show. So
The Red Green?
yeah, you've never seen the Red Green Show?
I thought you were going to talk about the Red Grange.
Oh no, it was a wonderful show that aired for several years, primarily in Canada. They showed it on PBS often. It's one of those things where how I would describe it would be, if you remember the Tim Allen sitcom Home Improvement, just take those Home Improvement, that show within a show they did. I don't think so, Tim, all the wacky shenanigans. Take that, and it's a show, and that's the Red Green Show. In fact, it's one of those things that I don't think anyone's ever talked about it, but I mean, Tim Allen, I think, might owe that man a check. I think he predates a lot that sitcom anyway. So,
Do any of us old-timers out there ask you for a specific program that they'd like to bring out of their memory banks?
yeah, I think Gibber, was it Gibber and Molly McGee? And I did Fibber and Molly McGee.
Yeah,
and
ain't funny, McGee.
Yeah, and Abbott and Costello, and I've a lot of it I've also done with, again, which is independent research by a lot of publicly available stuff, which I even recommend to you before we started recording, was archive.org, which is a place you can go where a lot of stuff gets legally set on the internet. I didn't know Dragnet was a radio show before it was a television
Is that
show.
a fact?
And I've gotten, I brought in a 4 terabyte hard drive, portable hard drive, into work. And if I get a spare moment throughout my day of running around like a chicken with its head cut off, I try to set up some, and I've got all of Dragnet. I've got even the short-lived Blue Beetle radio show. I was tickled pink to get a hold of something like that. That was an obscure superhero from the 40s. So I was pretty pleased about that.
So what is there such a thing as a typical day for you, or is every day different as far as?
Every day is different. Wednesdays.
We all wake up with a different smile.
Monday's my busiest day, where I have, the radio theater at 1:30, but also, a whole series of things. I have to deliver activity sheets, and I have to run around distributing flyers to the entire place for the radio show in the morning, so that they show up, and probably and a bunch of other activities that I'm blanking because there's a camera in front of me and a mic in front of me. And Wednesday today is probably my busiest day, but it has the least amount of activities. I have to keep one day with only 1 or 2 activities so I can actually get something done in the office. But today it would be my busiest day of the week because I'm just getting everything else done that I'm supposed to be getting done. So,
Well, listeners, one of the reasons we asked Mr. Morrow to be with us this morning, as a resident of a couple of years now at the Christian Village, I thought it might be a chance for some of us to express, on behalf of those who live there, our satisfaction with the way the Christian Village runs that show out there. I think corporate people are always juggling numbers and never enough money. Things don't get done that we think ought to get done, and that's nobody's particular fault. Economics being what it is, they can only do so much. The thrust on there is to keep the residents of the village with several capacities. You want to describe some of the different capacities that we live therein. Some of us are living in duplexes. And go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, yeah. Christian Village at Independent Living, where I work, there are apartments that people live in at the congregate building. And there's 2 floors of rooms there, as well as there's some cottages, single-room cottages nearby. And in the outer periphery of the campus, there's some like full-blown apartment, basically houses. And one thing I've done is I've started, much to the chagrin of people waiting to have their stuff copied in the main building at the printer, is I print off a lot of flyers and I cut them in half and I distribute them everywhere. And I think that's more of a personal touch than just doing a call list or something. And also, I noticed that older residents, they like seeing someone hustling and bustling about, you know. Yeah, they appreciate the extra effort you're going through, and I hope it helps to bear fruit.
Well, in today's society, places like the Christian Village fill a real need. Go back many years back, there wasn't any place to put Grandpa and Grandma. They had a county home or something like that if the economic needs called for that. Other than that, they had to kind of warehouse them in their houses. And it worked, but that's all I can say about it. It worked. Here today, if you're a resident of the village, you can find your days fulfilled. You don't wake up, oh gosh, what am I going to do today? There are things to do out there, and it's your fault if you don't take advantage of them. For instance, I've slept through 2 or 3 of Jamie's programs.
Not while you're in attendance. Yeah, not while you're in attendance. Not while you're in attendance.
I just confessed over the air now, Jamie. But seriously, we're lucky to have villages or communities who have a place like the Christian Village are indeed very, very lucky. And finding a place for Mother and Dad, particularly if either one of them are single, it becomes a real problem. A little lighter note, when Gene and I finished moving, we had one son put down the last package, is this the last time you're moving? I'm not so sure, but what he didn't mean that. But the village goes to a great deal of trouble. No, I don't say trouble. They go to a great deal of planning to kind of make sure that we're all taken care of. Not the least of which is the food facilities in the congregate. Serve very nice meals in the congregate building at a cost that you wouldn't believe, and I don't mean that high. I mean excessively low. So we're happy campers out there, and I just thought we ought to bring Jamie aboard to tell about some of the things we do to keep with the old people from tearing their hair out.
So Bill mentioned some of the things going on, different challenges as far as the economic times and only being able to do so much. Are there any particular challenges that you face in your job as far as either coming up with different programming or trying to find something for everybody or any other things like that?
My issue usually my biggest challenge is again, like misjudging the you have a very nice sign of Mel Brooks's Young Frankenstein there, and we've got a movie day on Tuesdays at 1:30, and I've tried a great deal to make sure there's like a high quality classic movie that might not be something that they've actually seen before, right? And so I tried Young Frankenstein, and and a few weeks before that I tried Robin Hood's Men in Tights, and they loved it. And then a couple weeks later I'm like, okay, I'll do Mel Brooks. I'm like, okay, Young Frankenstein went over like a lead balloon. It's so dry. And all that, and as Mel Brooks got older, his comedy got a lot more slapstick and a lot more obvious, and that's young Mel Brooks and relatively young Mel Brooks, and they just did not like it. It was just totally boring, and so I always have to constantly readjust for the audience about what programs or what activities or what shows they'll find interesting. The other day, Monday, I was doing the radio program, and it was last Monday was the big band, and I played Minnie the Moocher, and they hated it. They said all that yelling and caterwauling, they thought they're like, it's just like modern music, which I assume they mean the music of the 80s and 90s. And I was like, which I was already like, well, that's not really modern music.
Some had heard of Cab Calloway.
Yeah, and they were like, what was that? That was horrible. I hated that. That was, all that yelling. It's like, who's that young whippersnapper, And I was like, oh, no, that's classic.
So speaking of planning, one of the things this old fellow always has difficulty with each Wednesday morning is planning to bring aboard our sponsors, whom we appreciate very much. Go right ahead, Mr. Ash. Right back live in the studio here, station WLCN. The program, of course, is, I don't know, what program is it, Mr.
I don't know. I'm all mixed up now.
We brought a special guest for Viewpoint this morning, representing the Christian Village. And the reason I did that is a personal thing. We're residents out there now, and we're very happy campers. And Jamie Morrow is one of the reasons. Jamie is a kind of a techie guy, knows how to go into the ether and bring up strange programs and so forth. Does a lot of interesting things for we old people out there. Besides playing bingo, I'm not going to describe bingo according to what the English version of that is, because I might lose my license. In any event, Jamie Morrow, we appreciate your being with us this morning. You face a challenge when you drive over every day from Menard County. What's your biggest challenge when you walk through that door in the morning? People like me bothering you.
Most of the time, when I come in during the day, it's somehow I squish a great deal of my activities, the day's worth activities. I will have to squeeze in, say, the first 40 minutes of the day and get that done. Where I'll have to say, I'll come in through the door, and let's say it's men or women's coffee, and I've got to get the coffee ready because they don't like the coffee to be too hot, but they don't want to be cold, so I got to make it now. So I come in I rush, come in at 8, I rush over, and I have to get the exercise class at 9 ready because they like to see all that stuff ready and all that and get the right DVD in and all that. And then let's say I've got an event in the afternoon or something I have to deliver flyers for. So that means as soon as I come in through the door, I have to rush, get the chairs ready, put the weights in the chairs, turn around, make the coffee, then run around, and then by the time 9 o'clock hits, make sure their DVD's playing, then turn around, having already sent the printer through my computer to the main office next door, run over there, try to run the gauntlet from all the other people trying to get their stuff printed off, and grab that stuff, cut the paper in half for the flyers, grab the flyers, come back in time. If it's a Monday, come in back in time for the exercise program to end, and I take their blood pressures, then take the flyers and then distribute them throughout the apartments, the cottages, and the duplexes, and then come back and
Is it true that some of the older ladies' blood pressure rises as you work with them?
No, I'm afraid I'm a 4 at
That's a
best.
rumor. I want to clear that.
No, I'm afraid not.
What do you have planned for next week now, sir? This is the middle of the week. You have next week kind of playing on the drawing board just a little bit?
For once, I actually don't really have a movie planned, but the Monday program, the radio program, the AV Mondays, it's a rotating thing, and next week will be a radio show, more than likely either a shadow episode or a bit of Orson Welles' Mercury Theater. Another challenge I had was we just got done with October with Halloween, and everyone there has an aversion to anything remotely spooky. And so I had a bunch of Vincent Price stuff. I had a bunch of Ray Bradbury BBC dramas I got off the archive.org. I had a bunch of stuff like that, and I just had to kind of toss it all out because they wouldn't even watch Hocus Pocus.
Well, now, I want to ask you, since you're in charge of the Tuesday morning coffee gig for the boys out there. Let's see, how will we describe the ages of the boys? From to what would you say?
I don't think there's a single 60-something there. I think it's 70s, 80s on up. I think the oldest person is 101, maybe. Yeah. I think 100 or 101. So yeah, there's an older group of folks there. And men's coffee, as you might imagine, is very different from women's coffee. Women's coffee is very laid back and all that. And men's coffee, about every 5 minutes, somebody brings up some politics or something, and rah, 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 rah.
Now, speaking of politics, we're going to ask your advice on this Tuesday morning coffee. Will I be well advised next Tuesday to walk into the waving two flags in both hands, hoping for happy days are here again?
I have no idea. That is none of my business. I run the gauntlet enough just trying to use the printer.
It's pretty much of a quiet group. We sit around in a contemplative mood, but they enjoy that. They enjoy that morning coffee. It gives men a chance to get together and circulate amongst themselves.
It's a bit more raucous than the old French salon, I think. How about? I want to tip my hat in the direction of our director of activity out there, Julie King. She does a whale of a job for those of us who live at the village, and she's got a great attitude about it. By the way, she's a pretty talented girl too. She could have made it in show business with a break or two. You sit together and plan activities down towards the next week or 2 weeks or a month. On her end, no. She's a pretty good boss. She gives me a lot of leeway. It's just me.
She let me get you off for this morning.
Yeah. She gives me a lot of leeway to do what I want and to do activities as I wish. For the most part, she is definitely more like lets you hands up. She's not a micromanager, so which I really appreciate. She puts a lot of faith in all of her employees, so I think that's pretty special.
648-5510. Our guest this morning is the Director of Activities at the Christian Village, Jamie Morrow. We brought Jamie aboard because we want you to know more about the Christian Village. We're indeed, any community that has a place like the Christian Village in their community is indeed very, very lucky. Not everybody has children that are as attentive as our children are, and that's too bad, but that's the way life is. So the village feels a great need for some older people whose kids have already gone somewhere else. Jimmy Morrow is here. If you need to ask any questions, he won't lie to you because we'll shut the door on him. Go ahead, Loyd.
You'd mentioned some of the issues you ran into with Halloween programming and trying to find something for the resident states. You've got Thanksgiving as well as the Christmas holiday coming up. Do you have any kinds of special activities or programs in mind for those times of the year?
One of the weirdest things I've had to encounter is I've had to be much more conscious since taking this job of the movie rating system because I don't care. I don't care. I'm not offended by anything. So, unlike many of my other millennial and Zoomer internet brethren, I'm not I'm not really offended by anything. And I thought the perfect Thanksgiving or Christmas movie would have been Trains, Planes, and Automobiles. Mm-hmm. But I checked out in the back, it's an R-rated movie. And I'm like, well, gosh, so that'll be always something that'll run in. And so I don't know why, but for some reason when I think of a Thanksgiving movie, I think of Father the Bride. I have no idea why, but I think I'll bring that out at some point. About, Christmas, of course, that's easy. There are a bazillion Christmas movies. What I don't ever really want to do is just fall back on showing programs like what they can already watch on their own, like a Hallmark or Lifetime movie channel or something like that, which I think that it's something, again, like we were, flubbed a little bit with the break, where I was showing I was showing you that website, and and that's kind of my thing is to like, oh, did you know about this thing? Did you know about this slightly obscure comic strip or show or event or whatever, and I can kind of suck people in that way, and we miss commercial break, we miss comebacks from commercial breaks. The dangerous spellbinding power of my idiotic trivia.
Let's see. Oh yeah, we still got plenty of time left. So talked about the holidays. Are there any? Is there anything you would like to add to your program offerings that maybe you haven't had the chance yet because you haven't had the time or resources. But
Well, I want to have activities that everyone can enjoy. Again, for the visually impaired, I am slowly trying to get time to look into something for hearing impaired. Right now, it's just turning subtitles on in a movie or something. But I'm looking into that, and I'd like to get some research done on having more activities for the hearing impaired. And as far, I wouldn't mind having more events that are AV related for the visually impaired, as well as I tried to get a dance going, and I kind of had to modify the event on the fly. More physical outdoorsy stuff's going to obviously have to wait until later, but that's going to be my next thing, is trying to pull out of my weird trivia idiot hat is something for the hearing impaired.
Well, you got to remember that for the most part, we're a pretty docile group out there. Those days of being non-docile are long out of the picture. So each day, you've got to put your thinking cap on trying to get these old folks involved.
Yeah, I am. My daily crusade is against all of your collective boredom, to make sure you guys are having fun and that you're engaged, and that again, I've got something out of my idiot nerd hat to pull out that they can enjoy.
Well, part of the activities at the village officers is at noonday lunch. That gets people out of their rooms or out of their homes and get them to interact with other guests out there. And it's kind of not always the food, quite decent, but it's kind of a fun thing to do, to get out and talk with somebody else. Like in the morning when I get up, Gene says, "You're not going to put that Halloween mask again on, are you?" And I said, "No, that's me. I just shaved." So you have a real job in finding different things for different people that will be enjoyable to them, and you can't put a blanket over all of us.
Yeah. I just have to. It is like a great lesson in considering your audience, and it always has to be this act of empathy where it's like, well, walk a mile in their moccasins, and being able to constantly adjust on the fly, making sure they have something that they'd be interested in, that they'd be engaged in.
So you talked about researching things and finding obscure things on the internet. Do you ever sort of take suggestions from the residents about?
Yeah. And I have never heard of. I've already forgotten the Fibber and Molly McGee. Yeah. And shows like that. And another one was a radio predecessor to the Twilight Zone called, I can't remember off the top of my head, Eternal Sanctum or something, Inner Sanctum.
Inner Sanctum.
Inner Sanctum.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And I've shown an episode or two of that. And there's a lot of interesting things about, when you research those radio shows, there's a lot of interesting tidbits about pop culture history. For instance, the Superman radio show was the first one to introduce the weakness to kryptonite. It wasn't in the funny books. It was a weekly show, and the actor had other stuff to do. So to cover, they're like, they just had Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen running around. They're like, Superman's resting, he's got kryptonite poisoning. And that's because the actor needed some time off. So.
Well, you're working with a diverse group out there, and what some of us remember, others, that memory is long gone, or we have a different version of the same program. So it's a matter of trying to balance this thing and put it on a teeter-totter and wait on either side and to come up with something that applies to all of us, and that's almost an impossibility.
Yeah.
You mentioned how certain genres of or types of movies tend to go over better than others. Mm-hmm. Is the same true of the radio programs that you bring? Is there a certain type of radio audio program that people tend to like more than others?
I'm still going back and forth. Again, with the Halloween stuff, I had Orson Welles' Dracula, and it bombed because they were scared of Dracula. They didn't want, and I was like, oh, I did not realize that. But they loved Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, which is way scarier than Dracula. It's horrifying what it's a very human evil and everything else, and they loved Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca that Orson Welles had done at the Mercury Theater. Murder and infidelity and the house burning down, all this horrifying, ghastly stuff. But I've noticed that the more comic bookish I get, they really enjoy The Shadow and things like that. So I was really happy to get a hold of, and I haven't shown it yet, but I'm really happy to get a hold of a more obscure Golden Age superhero named the Blue Beetle, and it was at his short-lived radio show, and I was happy to get a hold of those episodes, and I digging through the rusty catacombs of the internet with my bullwhip and my stupid nerd hat. So,
well, Mr. Morrow has the technical ability to research a lot of that stuff on the internet, and therefore he can do some rather interesting things. Their movies they show very comfortable. They'll even furnish popcorn for you. Nobody's passed a beer yet, but that's all right. We're getting to that point.
Yeah, I not just to focus on AV stuff. I'm hoping to some point in the future to try and get some board games going and all that, and that would be nice. I even briefly considered trying the just because it's obscure and it'd be exotic, and there's a very old board game that preceded backgammon that was called the Royal Game of Ur, and it's the world's first racing game.
You ever heard that, Jim?
And I couldn't get a hold of it. The British Museum they're the ones that did all the translation for it, bringing it back into the light, and you got to import it from them, and they want the sun and the moon for it. So I was like, well, maybe they'll play backgammon. But yeah, the world's first racing game, and you roll dice, and you move these pieces along a track, and it's shaped like a T, and you're running the two parallel on the track, and if you get a wrong number, they fall off, and you got to start back at the beginning, and whoever completes the most rounds wins. And it had, again, backgammon basically replaced it. People kind of forgot about it, and the British Museum resurrected it. So, and it's just a little quirky thing I thought they'd enjoy, but it was the British Museum. They want their pounds. It was too expensive for me,
especially the new prime minister.
Oh, yeah.
The games like cribbage. Anybody ever show any interest in having cribbage tournaments?
I think it's because that's a card game that's known mostly in the South, and all that. We only really have one Southerner there, as far as I'm aware, and I always ask specifically about cribbage because I'm interested because it's a card game called cribbage, and I'm just like, what is that? What is that? What? And I think we had some bridge players at one point. The biggest thing, of course, is pinochle. They are pinochle fanatics. I have not one, not two, but 3 pinochle tables every Friday and 1 on Thursday. It is, a pinochle cornucopia of, and unfortunately, I learned how to play it, not very well. Unfortunately, I have a stunning admission. I hate pinochle. I am a tricky person by nature, and that game forces honesty. You have to play. You have to make certain plays. You have to do things a certain way. The game. If you have some marriages, the game forces you to show your hand to your opponent, and
trouble right here in River City.
It's such a wholesome game, and I'm like, where is the intrigue?
648-5510. Our guest this morning, Director of Activities at the Christian Village, Jamie Morrow, drives over here every day from over around Petersburg way. That's a pretty good commute. It comes in by way of 5th Street, goes through New Holland and Middletown to the New Holland Blacktop, and then down 5th Street every day. when it starts snowing and the winter blowing, it's going to be a different story.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I'm worried about taking this new job is I live smack dab in the middle of the country in Menard County. I literally live in the woods. You go out my backyard, go 20 feet, it's the woods. And you walk another maybe eighth of a mile and it's the Sangamon River. So when the snow starts flying, it really flies. And I don't have anybody that like salts or cinders the roads. So that'll be the thing I'm probably worried about the most. Because remember last February, we had all that snow come down. People were, and back then I used to take care of my mother. My mother was alive. She had just recently passed at that point, and I was wondering, she was a dialysis patient who had to be dialyzed in Lincoln. And I'm like, man, if she was alive now, if she wouldn't made it, we were snowed in I was snowed in for like a week. It was crazy. But, yeah.
Wow.
You need to get in touch with the road commissioner over there and form a good friendship with him.
He, where I live, it was the guy that owned the golf course, and he sort of
took care of you.
Yeah, the other way around. And whenever he had to make sure he went into town and had his coffee first. And he didn't really want to make too many trips because he had other things to do. So it had to completely stop snowing before he got out. And now it's sort of he's retired, and now there's the county people are doing it. But again, it's usually in the middle of the day or something if they come out. It's not like you spoiled city folks with your around the clock state highway maintainers and all that. I have a solid 7.5 miles I have to get through of untreated roads in the winter before I can get to a state road.
Let me give you a little tip. When I lived in Broadville Township, when I first moved to Broadville Township, adjacent to West Lincoln, the road that we lived on was actually in Broadville Township, and the next through the gate became the West Lincoln Road. Walter Ruey was our road commissioner, and one day I said to him, Walter, is there any way you could take care of us down that road? I'll take care of you, Billy. He took care of us in good shape.
Really?
That Christmas, I bought him a big fifth of whiskey. And I never worried from that day forward. He took care of us all the time. So there's a tip for you. Find your road commissioner and get him a jug of whiskey, and you'll be taken care of. Now, if you come out to a position where the roads are bad, it's simple as this. You can't get to work, period.
Yeah, I might, if I know ahead of time, I might stay in town or something. But yeah, that's the thing I'm worried about the most right now is
the food service at noon. You just stand around, you help. You're a big help to the folks who are in the staff there. And I find that they do a great job in their meals. They vary the menu. And it's a nice little outing for you. Some people are in their rooms or in their little duplexes all day, and it gets them out. And it's a healthy thing as far as your mind is concerned, as well as your own health conditions. So go ahead, sir.
Well, yeah. I'm in the process right now. Every now and then I'll come out for a weekend on a Saturday to learn the kitchen. I do have a kitchen manager's license from my previous job, so I can help out in the kitchen if I have to. Mostly, though, every day before I take my lunch, I just help them with the dishes and just and again, it's something just like with the flyers. It's something the residents like to see. They like to see somebody bustling about and all that, and seeing the activity, and it helps clear away some of the dishes so that the kitchen staff can focus on their stuff. And yeah.
Well, again, the reason I brought Jamie aboard is I want people in the community to know how lucky we are to have the Christian Village in our community. I have no idea as to what the openings are. That changes from a day-to-day basis at our ages. But if you have somebody in your family who perhaps needs some extra care, Christian Village is a place to pick up the phone and call them, or drop out and see Julie King. She'll not only be very gracious to you, she'll entertain you with a story or two that you'll enjoy. The activities, Jamie, are for this week. What do you have online for the old folks?
We've got today we've got Wheel of Fortune, and today's the lightest day for activities and is the busiest day for me. It's just because that's my day to get everything else done. And tomorrow we've got the Pinochle game, as well as Bible study, and as well as women's coffee in the morning. And Friday will be, again, the big Pinochle game. That's the one with 3 tables and so forth. So
Yeah, you mentioned Bible study. We should mention our chaplain out there, Ryan Edgecombe, does a nice job for us. He has weekly church services, and then he has Bible study for those folks who are interested in that. And that's above my pay grade. Go ahead.
And you mentioned the Pinochle games Friday, also the big bingo game Friday.
yes, Friday morning. Yes, that's right. We got the big bingo game. Lots of prizes, and I added gag prizes, because I have just a bunch of like random items in my bingo prize. So I've given the first person who wins a round of bingo gets the gag prize, and it's usually like a can of red beans or something like that, and or a can of evaporated milk or some such thing.
Jamie Morrow, we thank you for spending time with us this morning. I'm going to get you. I know you mentioned you wanted to stop at the Glendale Tap on the way home, but we can't do that. Seriously, Jamie, we appreciate the work you're doing out there for those residents at the Christian Village. We thank you for giving us your time this morning, sir.
And thank you for having me.